Okay, I wonder if it's now in the middle of September, now is it perhaps a useful time just to update ourselves, for those who aren't watching the progress of the devolution bill, just to see where we are and what stage we're at and perhaps what's coming next. The draft bill, the Citizen Devolution Bill, went through the House of Lords very quickly, as you'd expect. As it is, it's very much an enabling bill. Two broad thrusts to the bill. One is to refresh the 2009 Act, which allowed for the establishment of combined authorities, and the 2011 Act, which provided for the elected mayors. So, in a sense, what the bill is trying to tidy those pieces of legislation up. So it sailed through, as we would expect, with a few minor amendments. And now comes to the Commons. We think on the 14th of October for an important second hearing. Personally, I don't see the bill having too much trouble getting through the House of Commons. There will be a crossover with the Scotland bill, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But I think we're headed towards the relatively smooth passage of the bill, which will allow the government then to in effect bring into action the devolution deals. Now, across England, we saw upwards of 30 proposals submitted to the government by the deadline. To be honest, some of those I think were just markers. They were setting out some statements of intent perhaps to be taken forward next year. And I think what we're likely to see from discussions with departments is perhaps between 5-7 devolution deals brought forward by the date of this spending review, which we know is the 25th of November. It's perhaps though worth reflecting upon a recent National Audit Office report which looked at the process by which Wave 1 city deals were agreed. And in effect what that report showed was it took about 12 months from the date at which the deal was nominally agreed for real clarity to be reached on what exactly had been agreed. So whilst the devolution deals may be agreed nominally on the 25th of November, I would see a process of further clarification which would take several months thereafter. And indeed, depending upon what is agreed in the deals, there may be some need for some further either primary or more probably secondary legislation to enact some of the provisions in the deals. It's interesting to reflect though, looking back over recent weeks, the differences of approach across England, where in some parts of England universities have been actively engaged as part of the design of those proposals, and they've been part of those debates and bringing forward proposals. And I think that's very positive and very strong. In other parts of England, perhaps less so. Either perhaps because one side wasn't particularly keen to engage, or perhaps the other side wasn't particularly keen to engage. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out on whatever is agreed on the 25th of November. I think the other reflection on what we know from what we've seen in terms of the proposals, there are very few proposals in the deals which would have a direct influence on universities, around the way in which students are financed, the way in which research is financed. In one or two places there are one or two minor proposals. But I think what's increasingly apparent is the extent to which the deals will have an indirect impact upon universities, particularly in respect of their role as an anchor institution and their contribution to local growth, particularly around the way in which investment cash may be perhaps bundled together into packages rather than individual funding streams. And the proposals for the retention of business rates and the establishment of more enterprise zones, I think they provide opportunities for universities, but also they need perhaps a dialogue with what will become increasingly the combined authority and in some places elected mayors. We know, of course, that many of the deals have proposals for the greater influence or direction over the skills agenda, however loosely defined. And of course there is an increasing blurred edge in many places between vocational level skills, intermediate level skills, and some higher level provision. So of course that will have an indirect provision. So interesting time. The detailed negotiations are underway as we speak. And I think there's a real pressure on now within the government departments to in effect sign off the first of these deals at the end of this year, then perhaps a series more, if not formal devolution deals, but a new wave of growth deals into next year.